At the very end of 2023, I made this public goal that I wanted to read pretty much my entire physical TBR. I made a video saying that I have too many books for my personal taste, and then I wanted to get my physical TBR down to 15 books. For my personal sanity, I think I own too many. I'm going to show you all of the 89 unread books that I own, but I also wanted to share my plans for 2024 with you. This year, I want to get my physical TBR down to 15 books. Every month, I plan on making one video centered around reading books from my TBR. That will not get me down to 15. So other vlogs that I have planned will also incorporate books that I own as much as possible. I am very nervous to be doing this just because it feels like a big commitment, and I don't want to feel like I'm limiting myself to only reading books on my shelves, but I really just want this to be a big focus and priority for me this year. I don't think I actually said it, but in my mind, those 15 books were only like the new books on my TBR. I started 2024 with 89 books on my TBR, and halfway through, I have 80 books. I have done pretty well with reading or unhauling books from last year and previous years because that number is down to 43. But if you do the math, I have hauled a lot of books this year. A lot of them were gifted to me at least, but I was trying to not really have a physical TBR. So for the last 6 months of the year, I'm going to be reading everything else on my TBR. This is a big claim, but none of the books on my shelves currently should be on my TBR shelf at the end of the year. If I have any books, I want them to be books that I have just purchased. So reading the books from my shelves is going to be a huge project for the rest of the year. I'm starting it off with probably the most intimidating option for me, and I'm going to read all the sequels on my shelves. So let's come up here. Out of all the books that I have owned from 2022 earlier, I have one sequel. This is YA sci-fi. From my 2023 books, I actually don't have any sequels. We will start finding some more down here. I definitely have Defending the Galaxy. This is also a YA sci-fi series. It is the same author, actually, but they're very different vibes. Defending the Galaxy is like space sci-fi, and Outside In is dystopian. Also have The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This is the sequel to The Thursday Murder Club. I can't show you very well, but I do have more on my bottom shelf. I have Midnight Showing by Megan Shepherd. This is the sequel to Malice House. I am counting anything that is a sequel-esque, even if it is in the case of romance books where it's more of a companion, which means Leather and Lark is on my TBR. That also puts Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez and A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson. This is the sequel to A Kind Worth Killing. Well, actually, it's the third one. They're completely different stories, but it is still in the same universe. Really, if you go on Goodreads and it says that it is part of a series, I'm counting it. I have these two books. The Library of the Unwritten is the first one, I believe, and The Archive of the Forgotten is the second one. I have not read The Library of the Unwritten, so I obviously can't read The Archive of the Forgotten. Here's the thing, I am probably never gonna read these if I don't do it in this video. So my plan is to read The Library of the Unwritten. If I really like it and want to continue, then I will read The Archive of the Forgotten, but if I DNF or give this one a low rating, I will just unhaul both. So these are both technically on my list, and the final sequel is Iron Flame. This is a sequel to Fourth Wing. I've been putting this off. I surprisingly really enjoyed Fourth Wing, so I guess it's time to read Iron Flame. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and possibly 10 books for me to read. This is quite the list. Fantasy romance is out of my comfort zone. I don't typically read just like normal fantasy. I don't usually read a lot of romance. I don't read tons of like classic mysteries. But the thing is, I have all of these because I liked the previous book or books in the series. And this will get 10 books off of my TBR. I have to read, I think the math put it at like 13.33 or something books a month of these to be done with all of these books before the end of the year. And if I buy new books, I also want to add them to this number because I really want books that I own to just be ones that I've had in the last few months by the end of the year. And since it's not the last few months, anything I buy also needs to be read. This is going to be a very stressful journey. I sometimes lack self-discipline, so getting to 13 to 14 a month, it's going to be quite the adventure. So we need to start reading. So I decided to kick this video off with yours truly. This is a companion sequel to Part of Your World, which I enjoyed and gave 4 stars. I wasn't planning on buying this book, but I am a BFF member at Book of the Month. This was the book of the year that I ended up getting. The ones I was really interested in, I already owned, and this one I was like a little bit interested in because I did like Part of Your World, and so many people have loved this, like, desperately. And I am 123 pages in. So in this, we are following Brianna, and she is the best friend of the main character from the first book. And she is a doctor. She is working at a hospital, and she is up for this promotion at work, but like nothing else in her life is going very well. She was cheated on by her husband, and the divorce is going to be final soon. And also her brother was just diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and is having kidney failure and is really struggling because of that. So that's Brianna, and then a new doctor comes to the hospital, Jacob, and at first it seems like he is very standoffish, doesn't want to talk to anybody. The first day he's there, 7 of the people that come into the emergency room that he's taking care of die, and like nobody really likes him. Quickly we understand that he has really bad anxiety, which made his first week like very difficult, and it was made worse by Brianna because of the way she interpreted things. Very quickly, they move past that and they start writing these notes to each other. They're like writing letters back and forth. It's really cute. And they are quickly forming this friendship. Brianna is not interested in any sort of relationship because her dad cheated on her mom. She grew up her whole life hearing that men sucked. She chose to not believe it and found herself in a situation where she was cheated on. And then also, Jacob has just left a relationship. His girlfriend, she really did not care about him, and she didn't know how to really deal with his anxiety. Then his brother starts dating her, and then they get engaged. So he lies to his family and says that he has a girlfriend at work, and he's totally fine with his brother and his ex dating, getting married, all this stuff. And then a situation happens where he needs to ask Brianna to be his fake girlfriend and go to the wedding with him. So even though I am really liking a lot of this book, I am going to be DNFing it. I don't think that it is bad at all. I'm really enjoying a lot of this book, but the issues that she is having with her brother are just a little too much for me to handle. I don't want to get into too much detail, but the whole kidney failure, needing a transplant, being on dialysis thing, it's just, I can't read it. So sadly, because of that, even knowing that, like, obviously this is a happy romance, things are going to be okay with that. And even in the synopsis, it tells you that Jacob decides he is going to give a kidney to her brother. I just can't do it. So sadly, I am starting this with a DNF. I had really high hopes for this one, knowing how well loved it is, and I was really loving it too, but I just cannot continue. That is one book off of my shelves, so that's always exciting. I think next up I'm gonna go with The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. I just got the audiobook in for this, so that worked perfectly. This is the sequel to The Thursday Murder Club. We are following these old people who are in a nursing home and solving a case. Well, it's a retirement village. So someone arrives and needs their help. He's been accused of stealing diamonds worth millions, and he's seriously on the lam? What does that mean? But then a body's discovered, and they are up against a ruthless murderer. Septuagenarians? Septuagenarians? Why are there so many big words on the back of this book? Not that lamb is a big word, I just don't know what that means. I'm assuming that's some British thing. I probably just sound so dumb. Deceptuagarian. I don't even know how to say that. Does that mean they're in their 70s? Well, anyway, I'm going to read this book. I will check in with you once I have started. I have made it 116 pages into The Man Who Died Twice, which is a third in. This is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I think at this point there's 4 or 5 out. I read the first one a while ago, and honestly, I was not really intending on reading this book, but I went to a book swap, and this was the only book that was available that I was interested in, so I grabbed it, and I am actually enjoying it. We're following the same group from the first book in the series. So I think I told you a brief synopsis of this at the beginning. Where I am right now, nothing has happened that's not in the synopsis. The person has shown up and asked for help, and then one of their friends has been injured, and then a body is discovered, and they are trying to obviously stop this. This is a very character-focused series, but I don't know if it's the fault of the audiobook. I think that there's some issues with characters feeling like other characters in here. I think that the 4 main characters mostly feel like different people, but like the 2 male main characters and the 2 female main characters feel more similar. But then also like random side characters feel like the main character sometimes. There was an interaction between one of the main characters and someone else, and I was like, oh, is he talking to Joyce, the one main character? And it was some other person, and I'm like, that was weird. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's just something about specifically, I guess, the side character work that feels strange. I am enjoying this, but the plot is not very interesting to me. It's interesting the way they're interacting with these situations they're in, but the plot itself is not a favorite for me. Like, it's okay. It's very much taking a backseat to the characters, which is fine, but I'm not obsessed with this book. I have made it to part 3, which is 268 pages in. The last time, I am not joking, I was like 3 pages away from part 2, but I didn't realize that it was separated. Okay, I was 8 pages away, but I didn't realize that there was a part 2, or I would have waited to talk to you then. I am liking this. It is a book that when I am in the story, I'm having a good time with it. I think it's interesting, it's keeping my attention, but I don't feel any sort of need to get back into it. So probably going to be a 3-star book. I do like the characters, especially the female characters, and I do think that there is some good discussion in here on older people and kind of not getting with the times, but kind of being more respectful towards people than previous generations have been, and different things like that. I do think that this is too long. It doesn't need to be quite this many pages. I think, yeah, it is 352 pages, but it feels pretty long to me. I definitely don't need this much of it. I likely will not be continuing in this series as of this point, even though I'm enjoying it. If you like the characters in here, specifically the female characters, and you want a horror book, I would recommend Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. The characters feel so similar. That one obviously is more dark than this, but there's a lot of like stuff going on. There's like previous spies, there's bodies piling up. I mean, these people are friends because of a murder that happened in the first book that they want to solve. So they are involved in these gruesome things. Some bad things happen and they're like, yep, cool, need to talk to my friends about that. And it's like entertaining to watch that. So I am liking it. And there is definitely plot going on, but like the important thing is the characters, and that's generally not my preferred style. I am gonna go to bed soon, so I'm gonna finish this up tomorrow, and I am looking forward to it. I forgot, I got a package in the mail, and I want to show it to you. Nice and orange, like the sender's favorite color. Oh, okay, that is pink. Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy. I have 2 of her upcoming Patreon bookmarks, and the edges are hot pink. She messaged me, she was like, are you sure you want them, because like they're pink. I definitely was not expecting that. I mean, I knew it, but that's funny. So this is the first one. There's a holographic foil on it and a bookshelf. These potions, there's plants, there's books. Very cute. And then this one, which I am a little bit partial to, a ghosty lava lamp. This is so cute. So I just wanted to share those with you. I have finished The Man Who Died Twice. I cannot remember the name of this also. This is so floppy. Like, that was the worst demonstration of that. Could have just done that. I did enjoy this one. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I don't think that it's very memorable for me. I enjoyed it while it was going on, and I think that it's a fun time, but this just is not my kind of book. I will not be continuing in the series. I don't even think I'm going to keep this on my shelves. I don't own the first one, so I don't really see a need to have this on my shelves. I am glad that I read it though. I had a good time. I like the characters. I think that it was entertaining. I don't know what to say besides this. It's just not my preferred style of book, even though I think it's pretty good. So this will be the second sequel that is being removed from my shelves, both from my TBR shelf and like my shelves in general. The way that everything wrapped up was fun. There were little twists that I enjoyed. If you like more like quirky, cozy mystery kind of books, I would recommend this one. It's just not one of my favorites in the genre. So we've had a romance, we've had a mystery, and now I think we're going to go with a sci-fi. I have started Inside Out and I'm pretty far in. I'm 180 pages in. So I have decided that for direct sequels where I can't really tell you a lot about what's going on, I'm just going to check in halfway and then at the end, because like I can't tell you the plot. I can't tell you a lot of things. With yours truly, that was not a problem. And then with The Man Who Died Twice, it was a completely separate mystery in that one. But this one continues with the first one, which is called Inside Out. This is an older YA sci-fi series. Well, it's a duology. So this one came out in 2011, and I can definitely tell that it's a little bit older. It's not like out of date in like there's like offensive stuff in here, but it just feels like it was written a little bit ago, which I don't have any problems with, but it's just like definitely something to point out. I'm going to be reading another book by this author later, which did come out after that, and I feel like it feels more up to date. So we're following Trella, and in the first one, they being this society, is like in this enclosed situation, and there's like an upper society and a lower society, and the ones in the lower society are called scrubs, and they pretty much do the grunt work for all the rich people that live like above. But like, that's not a great life to live. So we are watching Trella learn about the society she's in, what has been kept from her, and trying to figure all of that out and possibly try to make things better for everybody. So this is a direct sequel. We are following the aftermath of everything that happened in the first one. The first one feels like very Hunger Games-esque, so a lot of similar themes. I think that the reasoning behind the society was interesting and everything that came with that. I gave the first one 4 stars. This one, not that I wish it was a different plot, but there's a lot of like repetitive things in it. A lot of it is her like climbing through the ducts. She's very small and like is an air vent cleaner pretty much. So that's how she like gets around and can sneakily do things. And there's a lot of that happening, a lot of just like moving around trying to figure things out, which feels a lot like the first one. That being said, I read so much of this in one sitting. It is YA, so that makes sense. But like, it's an interesting read. It's very fast-paced, even though it is repetitive. I like our main character. There's some like cheesy moments in here, but I think that comes with it being from 2011. And I'm excited to be reading this because like, when would I have picked this up? No idea. The cover just like this cover is so funny to me. Like, covers don't look like this anymore. But yeah, it's like sci-fi-ish, but like kind of dystopian. And I'm liking it, so I'm gonna check in again at the end. I've been listening to the audiobook for this one, and I'm enjoying that. So I'm gonna get back to reading, having a good time. I think it's at least going to be 3.5 stars. I would like some maybe different things to happen, but also I don't have any real complaints. I'm pretty invested when I'm in the story. I finished Inside Out. I'm going to give this one 4 stars. My main issue with the first half was that it felt too similar to the first book, and I think that in the second half that is fixed. There are still some similarities, but it definitely goes in a different direction. I think that the way that it ended both wrapped up the story, but also kind of didn't. There's a lot of things that were left unexplored, and I think that's kind of the point. Like, with dystopian stories, you are kind of like looking not looking forward to the future, but you're trying to make changes to make the future better for everybody, because like it's not a good time. And it ends on a very hopeful note, which I don't think is a spoiler. I feel like in dystopian books, like the ending tends to be on a more hopeful note, like improving the situations people are in and things like that. Also, this came out in 2011, like I think we're okay. I did enjoy it. It kept my attention the whole time, but it 100% did feel very much like a book that was written in 2011, kind of cheesy, and a lot of the themes that were in books of that time. I don't think this is like very similar to the Hunger Games, but there's definitely some parallels to that. But I enjoyed my time reading it. It was so easy to get through. If for some reason you were looking for a YA dystopian with some sci-fi stuff in it that is from 2011, I would recommend this. This one is off my TBR shelf, but it is going to live on my red shelves now. I have the first one. I enjoyed it. I like other books by this author, so very glad that I read this. Now, I'm a little scared, but we are jumping into the situation that is the Library of the Unwritten and the Archive of the Forgotten. I've started the Library of the Unwritten, which is the book on this TBR that I am the most hesitant of going into, because everything else I had read from that author before I'd read in that series. But this one, complete wild card, since I have to read this one to even get to the sequel that I have. Sean McGuire blurbed this, who I really enjoy. It says The Good Place meets Law and Order Bibliophile Crime Unit, and I think that's very interesting. I am getting The Good Place vibes from it. So we are following Claire, who is the head librarian at the library in Hell, and she works in the unit that is for unwritten books, which is such an interesting concept. It is all like unfinished stories and like ideas that were never brought to an actual book. So generally she is just doing repairing and organizing, but she also does have to keep an eye on the characters that might come to life and try to escape into the world. And that happens at the very beginning. So her and her assistant, Brevity, along with the help of a demon who has shown up to kind of like deliver this message, goes to get this guy. But then an angel comes and attacks them because he believes that they have the devil's book, the devil's Bible. And it's this like whole thing between angels and demons. They both need this Bible to like, I guess, have complete power or something. I'm liking this. It definitely does remind me of The Good Place, which I really enjoyed. Honestly, it feels like a mix of The Good Place and Supernatural, like the vibes of The Good Place, but with like more so the plot of Supernatural if they weren't hunting things. Does that make any sense to anybody but me? I don't know. But I am 130 pages in and I'm enjoying it. I am not completely invested. At the very beginning, I was like, ooh, I think that this could be like really, really good for me. And I am still liking it, but my enjoyment isn't as high as initially. There's just a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts, but like not in an overwhelming way, just in like, I think it's a little too much for me to be really invested in everything. But I'm liking the characters. I am liking the general story. The idea of there being this library in hell for unfinished stories is so interesting. Like the fact that characters can escape, so cool. I'm really looking forward to getting back into this one and seeing how the story continues to go. As of this point, I can see myself continuing and reading with this one. The only thing is I don't mind ambiguous endings in books. So there is a chance that I'm like, I feel like this story was enough for me. I don't need more. So I think that's really the only reason I would not read the second book. But also, if this is not at least 4 stars, I'm not continuing. Like if it's not 4 or 5 stars, I will just be unhauling this one. I am 290 pages into the Library of the Unwritten. The second third really lost me. It is a like not travel story, but it kind of feels like that to me. I don't know. To me, it is. We're just watching them like go around and doing things, and like how is that any different than things that I normally read? It's really not, but the way that it's done just feels like an adventure travel story. I don't know what it is, but I'm just not connecting to it. I thought that at first it was interesting. I wish it was focusing more on the concept of these characters that could come to life instead of it being all about this like devil's Bible situation. I don't know. I truly can't tell you why it's not working to me. I also don't really care about any of the characters, and I feel like you're supposed to. Like, it feels like, okay, it's very, like, there's a lot of things going on in the plot, but it feels kind of character focused at the same time. And I just don't really care about the characters. There's been some like moments that are supposed to be emotional, and if you cared about the characters, then you would probably be somewhat impacted by it. But like, I'm just not getting that. And then them just like going around with the whole devil's Bible thing, I don't care. I don't know how I feel about this. The beginning had so much potential for me, so I'm like kind of really upset about it. But at this point, I don't think I'm going to continue with the second one, which is both good and bad, because obviously I wanted to like what I was reading, and if I liked this one, then I would continue to the next one. But now it's just a book that I'm able to unhaul, and I don't have to read 10 books, I have to read 9 books. So mixed feelings about that, but I would prefer to be loving this book because, I don't know, there's just something about it that I thought that I could be obsessed with, and since that's not the case, I'm kind of upset. It's one that as soon as I stop reading, it's out of my mind, like zero thoughts about it, and it's just because I don't care about this little journey that they're on. So I'm going to wrap this up. My Spotify audiobook hours end in like 3 hours, and I've been listening to the audiobook on there. I'll definitely be able to get it done in time though, so I'm not worried about that, but I'm just a little upset. I finished the Library of the Unwritten, and I think I'm gonna give this 2.5 stars. The direction that it went in just kept losing my interest. I really don't care about these like journey type of stories, like watching people go around trying to accomplish things, and I don't know. There were some elements that I ended up liking, but they all took place in the library. I really wish we would have spent more time in that setting and exploring the things with that instead of it being this like outside quest that kind of maybe a little bit impacts the library. I don't know. It was a little frustrating because I feel like this had so much potential to be like really cool and something that I was really interested in, but I wanted the setting to be more focused on the library and not like running around doing other things. And then I never really felt connected to any of the characters, which I really think you were supposed to. So I am going to be unhauling this, which means that I will not be reading the Archive of the Forgotten. Also, the way that this one wrapped up, even if I was really liking it, I don't know if I would have needed to even read another continuation of the story. It wasn't like super wrapped up, but like it was way more than I really need. Well, not way more, that feels so extreme, but I don't need any more of this story, and I don't think that I would have, even if I enjoyed, well, okay, I think if I enjoyed the characters a lot more than I would have, but I don't need this. So 2.5 stars for the Library of the Unwritten, but 2 books off of my TBR. I am 175 pages into Midnight Showing. This is the sequel to Malice House, and in Malice House we are following Haven, and her father has recently passed away, and she finds out that she has inherited his cliffside manor. It's this huge house, and she has to go through all of his stuff, and she has just come out of this really bad breakup. She was married. Her experience with men at this point, just not ideal. She doesn't have a lot of money. Her ex is not responding to her, like sending her things and stuff, because she had to leave without a lot of her art, and she is an artist, and she's kind of trying to reinvent herself, and she decides that because her father was an author and a very successful one, she is going to take some of his short stories and illustrate them. Things with that might be not exactly what she expects. Creepy things start to happen in the house, and there might be some fantastical things going on, and she has to figure out all of that. So Midnight Showing is the direct sequel. We are picking up in the aftermath of that, where Haven and her sister are trying to figure out what led to everything happening that happened. They are on the hunt for a specific thing, which they believe will give more answers, and then also different family members, because there's some family ties going on, and they are trying to prevent certain things from happening again and kind of get some answers. Halfway into this, I am enjoying it. We are getting some interesting characters. There's some characters from the first book that we are getting to know a little bit more in this. They're also kind of traveling around a little bit, one, to try to figure out this stuff, but they're also on the run from some stuff from the first book as well. So they have to be secretive about a lot of things. So the cops who are looking for them don't know where to find them. As kind of assumed from the title and the cover, there's some movie stuff in here, which is interesting. In the first one, she has this part-time job of watching these very obscure, really gruesome and gross horror films and kind of recapping them for people that can't access them, because they're the ones that people can't really find to watch. And there's some parts of that, and then also we are getting at the beginning of every chapter little parts from movies that, not that she specifically reviewed, but are obscure films from a specific, whatever the equivalent of publishing houses are for the film world. For some reason, I can't think of it right now. Production companies? So that's been really fun, and I really like the connections to things from the first book that we're getting. This is so hard to talk about, but I'm having a fun time with it. I don't know if I'm liking it quite as much as the first one at this point, but a thing was just discovered that has me very intrigued. I will say, if you did not like the first one, I don't think you're going to like this one. It is a continuation of that one, and the ending is, I think, what a lot of people didn't like about Malice House. But I really like that. I think those elements are fun. I am not obsessed with this one, but I am really enjoying it. I finished Midnight Showing. I almost called this Malice House. That is the first one. And I did like this, but I'm not obsessed with it. Also, let me show you my new shirt. Lizzie McGuire. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yep, gotta buy that. So the rest of this book was just them continuing the stuff from the beginning, which makes sense, and trying to completely put an end to everything that happened in the first book. So there's a lot of action, otherworldly being, hunting, and stuff like that. When I was reading it, I was enjoying it, but there was just something about it that was not a favorite. I still think I'm gonna give it 3.5 or 4 stars though. I just think that when certain elements were introduced kind of halfway in, I was like, oh, this could be so cool, and that just wasn't utilized as much. Okay, it was utilized, but kind of behind the scenes. It didn't continue going in the direction that I thought it was, and we got more of a wide scope than I was expecting, which was fine, but I didn't really need that specifically. I wanted, I guess, it to be more focused on certain things. But I'm glad that I read it. The very last sentence of this really makes it seem like there's going to be more books. I don't think I will be continuing, because I think it's just going to really be creature hunting, which I don't need to read more stories like that. There was that in this one, and it was fine for a book, but I'm not reading a whole series of them trying to find different monsters and stuff. The thought behind certain things that happened was fun, and I really liked it. There's just, I don't know, I like a lot of elements of this book, but it just, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of more high action books. I want things to be going on, but I don't really want to read fighting and that kind of action. It wasn't that bad, but I don't know, just something about it. So probably 3.5 stars is what I'm going to settle on. So even though I'm not going to read any more in this series, I would read more from Megan Shepherd. I know she has some YA stuff out, which I won't go back and read, but if she has any other adult books coming out, I will probably read them. And generally, I had a good time with this one. Wait, I matched the book. That's fun. Not planned, but that's pretty perfect. Especially this color. Incredible. Was I planning on checking in with you earlier? Yes. At first, I was like, I don't really have anything to say. And then I got too sucked into the story and didn't realize how much I had listened to. So this is a companion sequel with Butcher and Blackbird. It is following characters from the first book, but a completely separate plot. I have made it, I don't know, pretty far in. I'm like 215 pages in. And I, at first, was not sure how I was feeling about it, because it's a lot slower and feels very different from Butcher and Blackbird. But like now I'm really invested. So I loved Butcher and Blackbird for the plot. I didn't really, not that I disliked them as a couple, but the plot and like how fun it was is what kept me interested in the story. In this one, the plot is fine. It's whatever. I don't care about it. But the couple, I'm really enjoying. Specifically, the mailman character. He's just like so invested in her and her well-being. It's so cute. We're following Lachlan, who is Leather, and Lark, who is Lark. Lachlan is a contract killer, and he finds himself in a situation where a job has gone poorly, and now he's kind of like in debt to one of his boss's like biggest clients, and this guy obviously is hiring hitmen, so like he's not the best, and Lachlan doesn't want to work for him anymore, and he ends up in a situation where Lark offers to help him get out of this contract. Why am I holding the book like this? These two don't like each other. There's a situation that happens at the very beginning that leads them to not like each other. Well, really, like immediately you know that it's Lark that doesn't like Lachlan, and he is just like immediately truly obsessed with her. But Lark's family owns a muffin business that deals with some sketchy things on the side, and she finds herself in charge of like dealing with contracts and things like that. So she overhears something. To try to save everybody, she's like, if I marry Lachlan, then all these problems will go away. I'll save him and people I care about. So they agree to get married, even though they don't like each other. This is definitely very slow burn. I got this from Book of the Month, and it literally says slow burn on the spine. I don't have much to say other than like, I'm obsessed with this couple. I don't know. It just makes me so happy to read, even though they're maybe not like the best people for me to be like, yes, I'm rooting for you. But I am. They're both maybe not the best people, but they have good intentions towards the people that they love. Where I am now, Lark is starting to kind of accept her feelings for Lachlan, and we're just continuing to watch him be obsessed with her, and like, I'm having a great time. I do wish the plot was a little bit more interesting, but even without that, like, I'm still really loving this. Even though it did take me a little bit to get into it. I'm very much looking forward to continuing this, though. I was initially planning on doing one more check-in for this, but because I already read so much, I'm just going to check in with you at the end. I'm very excited to get back into this book. I have finished Leather and Lark. I don't know how I feel about this one. Okay, so it is positive thoughts. It's so different compared to Butcher and Blackbird, so I like this one for the couple, and there were moments that I was like really into them as a couple, and then other moments that I felt like it was a little slow. I think the character work in this one is significantly better, but the plot was not as fun. That being said, like, I still had a really good time with it. We are also now joined by Bowser, so I'll move so you can see him. Okay, Leather and Lark. Plot, not as fun, like not nearly as fun. In Butcher and Blackbird, I was like laughing out loud, and even though it was like ridiculous and over the top and like maybe didn't make sense at all times, I didn't care. Like, I had such a good time and I liked their relationship. This one, I truly don't care about the plot. Like, the whole muffin cover-up business, well, it's not a cover-up, they do sell muffins, but like, I don't know, all of this stuff that like caused them to be fake dating, getting Lachlan out of this job he doesn't want to be in, like, I was never invested in any of that, but their relationship I was interested in. For a while I was thinking maybe I could give this 4.5 stars, but then the plot really felt non-existent in the last half, which made sense because then their relationship was kind of becoming more of an actual thing instead of it being fake. But there's just like something about it that felt a little bit off, but also I still really loved it. So I'm kind of between 4 and 4.5 stars. I'm still really happy with how this book went. I feel like The spice level is probably the same as Butcher and Blackbird. I didn't have any issues with it. Like, there wasn't any, well, I did have, there's one thing I was like, I personally don't really like that, but there weren't like any weird words that like, I don't know. There are some books where the words that are used to describe things just make me so uncomfortable. And that was not the case in this. Like, I enjoyed everything that happened. I just wasn't obsessed with most things. It's a hard one to talk about. So either 4 or 4.5 stars. Like, I'm really, really glad that I got to this one. Another sequel off my shelves. I will be reading the next one. It is a trilogy. There's one more, and it follows the third brother. So those two characters were in the first book and this one. I don't know the plot, but I'll probably read it. And I hope that since in the first one, the plot was really fun, and this one, the relationship was really good, we'll like bring it together and have like an absolutely incredible book. I mean, even though Butcher and Blackbird was 5 stars for me, like, I think that this author has so much potential, and I do really like this kind of romance where like the relationship between the characters is really good, and it's like dark stuff outside of them, and then also like it being very funny. So if you have any recommendations for things like that, please let me know in the comments. I'm not very well versed in the romance category, and especially dark romance. Like, really the only thing I've read is the Mindfuck series, and I generally enjoyed that, but the more I think about it being removed from it, the less I like it, even though I still enjoyed it. So moving on, getting very close to the end of my pile of sequels, and I'm excited for everything that's left. I have made it halfway into Defending the Galaxy. I am 262 pages in. This is the third book in the Navigating the Stars trilogy. I don't have the first one, but this is the second one. It's Navigating the Stars, Chasing the Shadows, and then Defending the Galaxy. And I am enjoying this one, but I feel like it's too similar in plot to this one, and also I feel like it's longer than it needs to be. I think the first 2 books were probably this length, and it's not that much longer, but like I feel like it's a little unnecessary. Things are feeling a little too repetitive with the first one. And I'm listening to the audiobook for this one, and I read the first 2 physically, and I'm wondering if that's making a little bit of a difference, because I don't think the audiobook is good. I might switch to reading the physical book, because like there's a lot of accents and they're bad, and like there's a love interest in here. I guess I could tell you what this book is about too. But the love interest sounds like an older man that's like talking with his mouth half closed, and I just don't understand. So in the first one, we are set in 22. They're living on this ship, and they have gone to this planet to do research. Her parents are archaeologists, and they are going to this planet that nobody lives on, and they are doing research on these terracotta warriors is what they're called, and they are these like unexplained terracotta little things, but there's like a lot of information with them, and they're doing that. So then in the first one, it's been a while since I read it, but there's some sort of like attack on their ship and the terracotta warriors and stuff. There is a romance in here, which I really like. I think the banter in it is fun. I feel like in the first one, their romance was like not forbidden in any way, but like it was something that they were kind of denying, and just watching them interact was very fun. And now that they're together, they're like kept separated because of circumstances, and like the ship is under attack, and they are both working security, and they're working different shifts and stuff, and it just like, I don't know, isn't as exciting to me anymore. And then the plot is just like them defending everything that's going on the galaxy, but I feel like they were doing that in this one as well. So I feel like this will probably be my lowest rated book of the 3, because I gave books 1 and 2 5 stars. These books are a little cheesy as well, like with the writing, but like I have fun with it. So I'm hoping that I start to like this a little bit more, because I feel like it's felt so long. Really, I think that it being too long is causing like all of my issues. I'm a little bummed, because this is actually the book on this list that I had the highest hopes for. Not specifically highest hopes, but like I expected to give this one 5 stars, and I feel like it'll probably be 4 stars. So I'm a little bit sad. I have finished Navigating the Stars. I think I'm gonna give this one 4 stars. I did enjoy it, but not as much as the previous two. I do think that there was a lot of repetition in this one, and I think the length of it also was not necessary. I feel like there were a lot of repetitive scenes within the book, so I just wasn't as invested in this one, but I still enjoyed it, and I would overall recommend this series. I really loved the first two, and I did really enjoy this one as well. I'm a little bit disappointed because I expected to give this one 5 stars, and I don't know if I have high hopes for the last 2 books for that to be the case. As of right now, none of the books that I've read, I've liked the sequel more than the first one. So I'm not like regretting reading all of these sequels, but also, is this convincing me to not read sequels anymore? Maybe. This is interesting because the way it wraps up, just like the other one from this author, like I feel like there could be more, but I'm almost positive this is the last one. It came out in 2020. Like, I doubt that there's any more. This does feel YA, which it is, so that's totally fine, but there's just like some phrasing of things and stuff. I'm like, interesting. But I liked how it ended. It all made sense to me, but also I feel like the way that we witnessed things was interesting. I feel like we didn't get a lot of what was going on because our character was in situations that kept that from happening. So we were kind of on the outside of a lot of stuff, which was an interesting choice. And like, I don't really love a lot of action, but I feel like it just felt a little odd. But glad I read this, glad I finished this series up. I will be keeping this on my shelves. Obviously, I loved the first two and I really enjoyed this one, and I have this incredible edition, so thank you to Monica. We are going to get into Iron Flame now. I've started this gigantic book and I have made it to part 2, which is 334 pages in, which is the average length of books that I generally read. So I do think this one is too long, but I am still enjoying it. I was so nervous going into this one, even though I did really like Fourth Wing, because there are tons of people that hate the second one. But also, if you look at Goodreads, the average rating for this one is still like a 4.5 or something. So I think it's just a lot of like more avid readers that aren't liking this one because they're being more critical of it. I don't read a lot of fantasy, so maybe that's why I am enjoying this one, but I know people that read a lot, like primarily fantasy, and still really like this one. I'm not liking it quite as much as Fourth Wing. There are a lot of similarities between the first and second one. Our main character, Violet, is still at this school. In the first one, she's in her first year. The second one, this is her second year. So there is a lot of repetition with that. Like, we see some of the same things because the characters are going through the same thing. We aren't in the first year stuff anymore, but we are seeing that because there's obviously new people being introduced. There's obviously classes and like the training mats and stuff like that. In the basics of it, there's not a lot going on outside of that because the stuff in the first book that is outside of the schooling stuff is related to the stuff in this one. And this is difficult for me because I don't read a lot of fantasy, and especially not fantasy series, but I think because I like the characters in the first one and a lot of them are in this one, like, it's still working for me. I don't think we've needed quite this much of the book. This is over 600 pages and I feel like that's probably not necessary, and I've heard that part 2 feels like it should be just a separate book. So I know a lot of people aren't a huge fan of that, but like, there's a lot of hatred towards this book and I'm not feeling that at all. Honestly, probably 4 stars at this point. I gave Fourth Wing 4.5 stars. My main issues with it were the writing was just like so repetitive and like not great in my opinion. I did read that one more physically, and this one I'm listening to the audiobook more for it, so like maybe I'm just not noticing some of those things. There were a lot of repeated phrases and stuff in the first one. This one I'm not like having issues with things like that, so maybe it's improved. Maybe with the audiobook I'm just not as aware of things like that, but I'm having a good time. I'm glad that I'm reading all of my sequels in this video and then I don't have to talk about sequels in videos anymore. This is difficult. It's so hard. I can't tell you the actual things that are happening. Very difficult because I don't want to spoil the first book. I don't want to spoil this one, but like, there's less I can say about a sequel because it's obviously impacted by the first book. But so far so good. There have been some moments of it dragging a little bit, and I really don't think this book needs to be be this long. I think it very easily could have been the same length as Fourth Wing, but I'm having a good time and I'm excited to finish it. I have finally finished Iron Flame. I feel like I read this book for the entire month, which is not true, but it took me a very long time to get through. Yes, this audiobook is like 28 hours when I think my average audiobook length, it's not 8, but it's way closer to 8 than 28. This one's hard for me because whenever I read part 1, I was like way more in like a reading mood. I haven't read quite nearly as much in the last week or so as I did in the rest of the month, and I don't really know why that happened. I feel like I'm falling asleep right now, so if my eyes are closed, I'm apparently really struggling. I think that there was a lot of boring stuff that happened in part 2. Part 1 was very repetitive with Fourth Wing, but like it made sense to me. And then there was just a lot of kind of boring stuff that happened in the second part. So I never felt like sucked into the story. And even like the action stuff that happened in this one wasn't as exciting to me. I generally don't care that much about action. But in Fourth Wing, when like the fight scenes, like the battles and stuff were happening, I was like invested. And in this one, I'm like, it's fine. So I don't know. I think I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. I gave Fourth Wing 4.5 stars. And when I finished that one, I felt way more excited. I was invested in that book. I read it very quickly, like the whole time I was reading it. I was enjoying it. This one, there wasn't any point where I was like, wow, I hate this. But I didn't feel nearly as invested. So there is that. This book did not need to be this long, did not need to be 600, 700 pages, 623. Yeah, it did not need to be this long, but I will be reading the third book. How many books are in this series? Is this a trilogy or are there going to be like 20 of them? How do you talk about the second book in a series? I don't know. As evident by this whole video, I don't like doing this. Booktubers that frequently read series and talk about them, hats off to you, because this is hard. I think I brought this up before. I just like don't want to spoil anything, but then what the heck am I supposed to talk about? Because like even the synopsis is a spoiler. I feel drunk and I haven't had anything to drink. So that's how I feel after finishing Iron Flame. Thanks for listening to me. Time for another book. This was not the book to end this video with. I am halfway in. I just got to the end of part 1. There's 3 parts, so I figured that made sense for updates. And this is so boring. Like, it's so boring. So when I got this from Book of the Month, I didn't realize that it was a sequel to, what's that book called? The Kind Worth Killing, and then The Kind Worth Saving. The title change, the like design is completely different, and the synopsis doesn't mention Lily from the first ones until like really far in, and I didn't read that far, if we're being honest. But it could have been marketed a little differently so that I was aware, because I loved The Kind Worth Killing, and then The Kind Worth Saving, I think I gave it like 3 stars. I don't know. It was fine. But if we're being honest, I wouldn't have read this if I would have known initially that it was part of that series. So why did I act like it was going to be a great book to put at the end of this and I was going to really enjoy it? I don't know. So we are following Martha. She was very content with her life as it was, but then this guy, Alan, comes into her life and very quickly like proposes to her and she says yes. Then she starts to think that she doesn't actually know who he is and who she is married to. He is like a traveling salesman for like merch for teachers, and he is going to conventions and stuff a lot. So he comes home and she's like, oh, I'll be nice and I will wash your clothes. But there is blood on the back, and this was after there was this like person that died at the convention he went to. Well, not at the convention, but it was like in her hotel room, and she also like witnesses him like smiling in the mirror, and she's like, why are you practicing smiling? So then she's like, you're actually a murderer. So she starts to look into it, and there are multiple circumstances that could mean that her husband is a serial killer. So she contacts her friend from college, from graduate school, Lily, who is in the previous ones, and was like, I need your help because I think I'm married to a murderer. So she tells her all the evidence. Lily's like, yeah, he could be one, so let's look into it. So that's what happens. So we're getting Martha's perspective and we're getting Lily's perspective, and where we are pretty much halfway in, Lily is like tracking him and has found out some interesting information that could change how everything has been looked at. But like the execution of this, I don't care about any of this stuff. It's just so boring. That's all. Like, that's the synopsis. My thought is I'm a bit bored, but it's short, so we're gonna read it. And I spent money on this book. Here's to hoping part 2 is better. Got some pages to go, and I'll see you in like 3 seconds. I have finished A Talent for Murder, and I'm gonna give this like 2.5 stars. I don't think that anything that exciting happened in here. I don't think that anything was really engaging or super entertaining or exciting. Everything was just very straightforward, very standard, and if this series does continue, I'm not reading anymore. It sucks because like I love The Kind Worth Killing, and then The Kind Worth Saving, like it's fine, and this one just like it's just going downhill. I think he was trying to kind of continue the success of The Kind Worth Killing, because honestly none of his books have been nearly as well loved as that one. So I guess he's like, well, I'll write the series, but like, this was just so boring for me. But that does mean I've read all the sequels on my TBR. I don't know why I'm holding it like it's like a serving tray. This honestly was kind of a disappointment. It makes me never want to read sequels ever again. I didn't like any of these more than I liked the first book in the series, or the second one for any that has that. I didn't have any 5 stars, but I now have 10 books off of my TBR. Next time I'm reading books for my TBR, I want to do a kind of scavenger hunt type of thing. So leave me prompts in the comments. This could be a book that I can spell my name on the cover. It could be find a green colored book, like whatever you feel. I'm gonna go through and pick some fun ones. We started this video with 80 books on my physical TBR. So during the time of filming this, I have hauled 4 books, but I have gotten 24 off of my physical TBR. So we're down to 60, which makes things feel maybe a little more doable. That's still over 10 a month, which doesn't feel like I made that big of a difference. I do have a few books coming, so that number will probably go up for the start of the next video. And I don't know if I have quite as many plans to read from my physical TBR in the next month. It's fine. We'll figure it out. You can expect me reading books from my shelves based on your prompts at the end of August. If you made it to the end and want to leave me an emoji to say you were here, you can leave me. I think there's a drop of blood for A Talent for Murder, and I will see you soon. Bye.